In today's video, we're looking at the latest trade talk around teams like the Rangers, Canadiens, and the Oilers. Plus, we have some big news in Calgary. The arena deal that we thought was in place to get the Flames a new building appears to be scrapped, or at least we have some major issues between the city and the team that need to be worked out. It's not looking good in that regard. Plus, we had some more players added to the COVID protocol as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As we record this video here, December the 23rd, we still continue to see more players added to the NHL's COVID protocol. We've seen more NHL coaches and other support staff added to it as well over the last day or two. I believe we're up around 150 players and numerous staff. I think there's 6 NHL head coaches. A lot of them are going to be going through this over the holidays, which certainly is not good. The latest ones today include some important pieces too, like Maple Leafs top defenseman Morgan Rielly, Frederik Andersen of the Carolina Hurricanes, who's been having a solid year as their number one goaltender. Of course, he's scheduled to make his return to Toronto early in January, and of course, because he's now in protocol, that certainly puts that in jeopardy and in doubt that he'll be able to play in that game. The Jets had a couple more players, including Andrew Copp and Christian Vesalainen. So, we've seen head coach DJ Smith of the Senators added in there as well, I believe, in the last day or two. So it's certainly not good seeing. The numbers continue to climb. The Flames situation, which was the worst of all, appears to be stabilizing. I haven't seen any new names added over the past few days, so that's always good. Hopefully things are on the mend. And the NHL continues its abbreviated pause here during this holiday break, which will go until December the 26th, where players will report back to their teams and get ready for their next batch of games, which hopefully we can get off here without too much of a problem and get these games played so that we don't have more issues. The NHL did acknowledge as well that gap of the Olympic break in the schedule that was included during the month of February will be used to make up games, so there will be NHL games scheduled. They've asked all the NHL teams for their building availabilities, and they're working on piecing together some games in there to make up the ones that were postponed, and we'll see where that goes. We won't have a firm schedule on that for a little bit, but when we do, we'll discuss that here on the channel and see where teams are going to end up going. It could be an odd schedule the second half of the year. Like I said, I wonder if we will run into any other issues with cross-border games or anything else, and might have to see the NHL adjust its format here as we move along throughout the season. Now, as I mentioned, we had some pretty significant news in the last 24 to 48 hours out of the Calgary Flames organization, between the Flames and the city, on their new arena deal. Now, of course, the original deal to get the Flames their new building was originally struck back in 2019. It's been some time. I assume the next time we'd hear something would likely be when they were about to start building, which was hopefully going to be in the not too distant future here. Now, apparently, according to the new mayor of Calgary, the deal is in jeopardy, and basically the Flames appear to have pulled the plug on the situation. So recently the Flames have informed the city that they were pulling the plug on the deal for the new event center. Essentially, it was a $550 million deal that was originally reached, like I said, back in 2019. They were going to agree to do a 50-50 split where the Flames were covering 50%. The city was paying the other 50%, but the city was also paying for the demolition cost of the dome, as well as some other costs involved with the remediation of the land and levees and stuff like that, which totaled about $22.4 million as well, plus, of course, the cost of the land itself. So certainly the city's on the hook for more than 50% when you factor that stuff in. Now, back in July, this past summer, 2021, CSEC, which is the Calgary Sports and Entertainment Company, which is obviously the head company here for the Calgary Flames organization, asked to make some changes. Now, after this was discussed, they certainly removed as well. They removed CMLC as the development manager. Both parties added $12.5 million for potential cost overruns, and the new mayor, because they had an election during this time frame since the last deal was originally struck, didn't support this deal, and they've been working with the Calgary Flames since then to mitigate the cost. And of course, after that, the city agreed to cover another $6.4 million in roadway costs, which left $9.7 million for the Flames to cover, and they essentially balked at that and have pulled the plug. So the total value of this project is $650 million. and the Flames are walking over 1.5%. So the mayor went out and put a whole series of information here through Twitter, outlining this whole thing. They want to be the first ones to let the people of Calgary know and kind of explain their side of the story here as to what happened. The mayor said that they were very shocked and surprised, basically, that the Flames bailed on that small amount of money. If you think about it, the total cost, $650 million, the amount of money that we're talking about here is a pretty small chunk of change compared to the total cost. So personally, I think it's probably just a negotiating tactic. I think the Flames are just trying to gain some leverage here. There's been absolutely no talk about relocation. There's been no talk about no worry, I guess, or concerns about anything to do like that at all. The Flames themselves have gone on and put out statements that they would stay in the Saddle Dome, and they obviously want to get something done here, but I don't know. Like, to me, the Flames, they need a new building. I mean, I know I personally haven't been to the Flames arena, but based on what I've heard from fans and what we've seen with other teams, it looks very, very apparent that a new arena would go a long ways to enhancing the fan experience and just getting themselves in a new building. They've been in that building since 1983. And certainly it would also go a long way to help push up the value of the franchise as well. If you take a look at the most recent evaluations out of Forbes, like their provincial rival, the Edmonton Oilers, are now worth over $1 billion. And a big part of that is the value of the new arena. Now, the Flames, in my opinion, are getting a pretty good deal here. I think they're pretty fortunate to be getting any kind of taxpayer money to help pay for the arena, where many other cities have not had that privilege. So I think they should really go back here and get this done. But we'll see where this goes. But to me, this is a big problem for the Flames because I think the new building is extremely important to moving this team forward, and it could be a major issue. But this could also just be a negotiating tactic too. So it'll be interesting to see where this story goes. Now, on to the trade rumors for the day. We want to look at a couple of items here. One, Ben Jerard of the Montreal Canadiens appears to be the defenseman getting the most attention here early in the trade market. Now, of course, we're still a long ways away from trade deadline, so we're likely not going to see a whole lot of deals for the next little bit, but there's certainly lots of teams having conversations, jockeying for position in the standings and trying to determine if they're buyers, sellers, or what their future holds here in the short term. And, of course, really based on the rental market, there's not a lot of high-end D talent that's available this year. So a guy like Jerard, who's got a lot of playoff experience now, and certainly shown that he's capable of playing big minutes and had a real big role in Montreal's run to the Cup final last year, to me, just increase his value, and many feel that Montreal will get a first-round pick for him. Considering the awful season that the Habs are having, and many feel like they're likely going down the road of at least a retool, if not a rebuild, some of these players on this team is almost a guarantee to be shipped out and traded off to shake things up. But out of all the ones that they're looking to do that, it's probably, guys like Jerard are the most likely to get dealt at the deadline. He seems to be getting by far the most attention. They will probably attempt to move out a few other pieces here, but we'll see where Jeff Gorton goes. But given the fact that the market is thin, his valuation and the price teams are likely going to be willing to pay for him is quite high. We've heard several teams, as many as 8 to 10 teams linked to Jerard, and I would imagine he'll be one of the hot commodities here at the deadline. Now, speaking of defensemen, we know that the Rangers are also a team that are having a phenomenal start to the season, and it's pretty much very, very likely that they're going to be buyers at the deadline, adding a few extra pieces here. I don't see them necessarily going out and swinging a big swing here and trying to hit a home run with a massive upgrade, but I do see them adding, at the very least, some additional depth. Many feel that they need like a third pair defenseman, maybe a veteran guy who can come in, be like a stabilizer type D, play about 15, 16 minutes a night. They kind of compared it a lot to what Andy Green did with the New York Islanders, although to me, they could use something a little bit stronger than that. Green's been, a good D in his career, but where he's at right now, to me, he's not really what the Islanders need. Good leader, good guy, good for the young guys, but at the same time, they could use somebody that's not just, good with those types of things, but actually good, solid on the ice who can perform at a higher level. At least that's my take. But either way, Arthur Staple of The Athletic, who covered the Islanders for a long time and is now switching his focus to cover more of the Rangers, recently discussed this in an article asking around the NHL various scouts what they felt the Rangers' needs are going to the deadline. in 3 out of 3 all said a third pair defenseman. So certainly look for them to be adding here on the blue line. I wouldn't be completely shocked if they consider adding a top 6 forward, but obviously after losing Sammy Blais, there's a hole there, and they have some other players that they've been trying to fill that spot with, and it kind of depends on where things are at. They may not necessarily do that because the price on that kind of a player would be big, and it might prove to be too costly. They're not going to want to jeopardize their future. This is the first year they kind of got themselves back to be solid in playoff contention. They're not going to be going too crazy here. I think Chris Drury will be somewhat conservative. Try to give his team some extra additions here for potential playoff success, but at the same time managing the future as well. Now, the other team we want to talk about is the Edmonton Oilers. We talked about the possibility of them making a deal with the Coyotes before in the last few days here for defenseman Jacob Chychrun. And as much as Chychrun would be a tremendous addition, and I think he'd be a terrific fit there, exactly something that they could certainly use, it would be very tricky to do. There would be a massive acquisition cost, plus then you have the cap situation. To me, it's more likely they add in other areas. Now, the other problem, too, is that if you're looking at adding a real high-end player with term, the Oilers are likely going to have to move some young assets that they might not be willing to do right now. For example, if they brought in Chychrun, you'd pretty much have to guarantee that Philip Broberg would probably be the centerpiece going back. You're probably looking at adding another first-round pick in there, and probably at least one more piece, another young player as well, and probably a contract to boot to make the money work. So, could the Oilers do it? Sure, they could. But does it really make them significantly better in the short term? That's what they need to ask themselves. And many feel that the asking price is probably going to be too high. So if they kind of pivot from that, another member of the Coyotes that would make a lot of sense for Ken Holland to take a long look at here would be Phil Kessel. Kessel's in the final year of that contract, and he signed way back when he was with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Of course, there was some salary retention already from the Leafs when he was traded to the Penguins, and if they can find a way to have the Coyotes retain 50% of the remaining cap hit, they can actually get them, get him on the books here for a little over $3 million, which is not too bad considering he's got multiple Stanley Cups to his name. He's still putting up good production on a bad team, and he's certainly a guy who's proven in the past that he can play with high-end talent. He filled in nicely with Crosby and Malkin in Pittsburgh, and he can do the same with McDavid and Draisaitl. He's still a real strong ability to put the puck in the net, and to me would be another veteran guy there that could make a real lot of sense for the Oilers to add. I think they'll likely try to add a forward and a defenseman if they're able to, depending on the cap situation. That's going to be a big part of it, of course. Depends on what they can get the Coyotes to take on for a contract going out as well to level things out. But I wouldn't rule out the possibility that the Oilers and the Coyotes do get a deal done, but it may not be for Chychrun. It could be for Phil Kessel instead. So let me know what your thoughts are on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.